2006. They went up 70% in 2007 and back to 56% in 2008. Now, if you go to the table below, you'll see that for the fourth grade, if you go across, that the number or the percentage of students who are proficient or advanced is 56.4% for 2009. So you see this fluctuation, but then we're, it's still flat, and we're at that 56%. So what this means is that 56% of the students who are in the fourth grade are proficient, are meeting grade level standards, are where they need to be in the fourth grade. So, this is actually, Salina is an interesting situation because we could also think of Salina almost as the best case scenario for Yemeni Americans in the States, because Salina is in the midst of this largely Arab American community, that it is surrounded by many Arab American organizations, by Yemeni American organizations, by some of the most active and supportive organizations, and I can name the ACC, I can name Access as two of those main organizations providing services, not to mention the other Yemeni American organizations that also do provide services to help support the community and the education of the youth. And I say it's the best case scenario because Salina is in a district that is a high-performing district in the state of Michigan. So if you look at district data, we have 77% in 2008. But then also if you go to the bottom and compare the state data, so the lower table is the state data. So if we look at the fourth grade, in 2009, our fourth graders in that table is 56.4. The state data is 84%. So statewide, 84% of the students in the fourth grade are basically are meeting grade standards. So what is the difference? What is that gap? So if you look at the gap between the Yemeni American students in Salina compared to the district, that's about a 20% gap. If you look at the gap with the state, you notice there's a small table there. It says the difference between the proficient or advanced is about 27 points, or 27 percentage points, right? So we're between almost 20 to 25 points difference between performance in the fourth grade in reading. So it's interesting, right? Because you look at the numbers and you say, and data, and the people who look at data, right? We learned that you have to look at data from different angles because data is basically how people present it and how people talk about it, right? So when we say 56% are meeting grade level standards, equally, right, on the other side, 44% are not meeting grade level standards. 44% are below grade level standards. So now let's look at the kids who are meeting grade level standards and probe further, right? If we go, if you notice that there's the column that counts proficient or advanced is the last column, and it says 56%, 56.4%. Now let's look at the advanced, the kids who are advanced, the kids who are comfortably above grade level standards. That percentage is only 5%. Now let's look at the kids who are proficient, it's 51%. So although we have this great number, 56.4%, who are meeting grade level standards, only 5% of that are comfortably above grade level standards. So where are the rest? The rest are in that spectrum, in that they're meeting grade standards, right? But they could be at that borderline, right? They could be the kids who could fall below grade level standards if they don't receive the right interventions and the right instructions. So we'll move on to the next slide, and it talks about math. And you see quickly that when we look at math, it looks much better, right? Because we're and the reason behind that also is math does not involve or although we'd like math, and this is reflected in this data. And so for the fourth grade students, 91.4 are on grade level or proficient or advanced. If you look at the fourth grade level, statewide, it's 92%. So it's, we're basically, the achievement gap is closed, right? But we could, when we go to the other grades, we'll see that there is a gap. And we could, if we look at just the fifth grade, we see that it's 71%, 92%. And so we see some gaps, but at least in the math, it doesn't look as alarming as the reading levels. And then even when you look at advanced and proficient, you'll see that we're not too far. The gap is still there, but it's not as significant, or at least we have more students who are in the advanced level. Could we move to the next slide? Okay, this is again reflects the data for the fifth grade. Now, if you look up between 2006 and 2008, fifth grade in Salina, they stayed exactly around that 50%. So 50% of those kids. When we talk about percentages, and sometimes we lose sight of what are we talking about, right? So if you have two classes that have 60 students, that means 30 students are not meeting grade level standards, right? So if we think about 30 students from 30 families, or it becomes a significant number and something for us to pay attention to and think about. In comparison to the district, you see the gap again. Consistently, it's about a 20% gap. And again, in terms of advanced, proficient, again we see, if you look at the small table to the right, you see that in both for the proficient or advanced and in the advanced column, we see a 20 percentage plus gap between students who are meeting grade level standards in the fifth grade in reading. Okay, so math is interesting here in the fifth grade. Now, sometimes those of us who are in education, understand that there are so many different factors that affect sometimes the performance of a grade level. And that's why we don't look at the performance of grade level per year, and we try to look at trends and to see where the fluctuation, because sometimes you could have a cohort of students who bring the scores of the class or the school down. This is the math scores for the fifth grade, and again, we see that, for the science, I'm just going to jump to the science. We see the increase from 2006 to 2008 from 48 percentage point to 68 percentage point, which is a huge jump, 20 percentage point. Those are not easy points for schools to attain, and it does take a lot of work on the part of the school's community to achieve that. But then in the fifth grade, 2009, we go back to 58%. So again, we see this fluctuation, and but if you look at the district, you see where the district is maintaining that higher percentage, and the gap, that's still almost like a solid gap, not only in reading and math, but also we see it in science. Again, in math, we could say that the gap is not as huge. I'm just going to keep moving. So let's look at the eighth grade, right? And the eighth grade is a significant grade to look at, because we look at it, the eighth grade, as a predictor